A lot of athletes bench press every week like it's a religious practice. Aside from how much you bench being the ultimate assessment of where you stand on the gym bro hierarchy, it actually is an extremely effective exercise to develop strength in your upper body. What happens though is novice trainees, when they start training, they make such rapid progress in the bench press and then make rapid progress in their upper body as well, especially in the mirror muscles like the pectorals and the arms. And so they become obsessed with the bench press. They bench press every week, sometimes twice a week for months on end, and then either get injured or stop making progress and just end up at this dead wall. So for the vast majority of athletes, the best way to improve your bench press is going to be by not bench pressing. So there's a couple concepts you have to understand for you to grasp that concept and violate your religion. The number one is structural balance. So you have to understand how a joint moves, how a muscle produces maximum force. In order for the nervous system to allow a muscle to contract and express maximum force, the joint that muscle affects needs to be surrounded by muscles, synergists and antagonists that are strong enough to centrate the joint and decelerate the movement. If your bench press is so strong, your tricep is so much stronger than your bicep, for example, you snap your ligament off if the muscle doesn't decelerate. And the same applies for the scapular and muscle, the shoulder joint. So when you correct the strength ratio of the antagonist and the synergist relative to those prime movers like the pectorals and the triceps, you are able to express your strength potential. A lot of people have a hard time grasping this concept. The best metaphor I've heard for this concept was told to me by Matt Wenning. And he says, when you build a race car, you start with the brakes. If you had the engine of a Hellcat, but the brakes of a mountain bike, you wouldn't drive the car very fast if you had more IQ than a baked potato. So if you want to be able to express the strength of that engine, you need to put on the proper brakes. A lot of athletes want to keep strengthening their engine until they have an engine of a Ferrari, but they have the brakes of a tricycle. So you need to correct structural balance. Now, the second problem that happens is when you continue to over-strengthen relative to the antagonists and the synergists, the prime movers like the pecs and the triceps, you develop faulty movement patterns. You continue to use the same joint angle, the same bench press every week. You create repetitive strain injuries. So you develop scar tissue in the pectorals, which further creates dysfunction with the biomechanics, which further creates strain on the pectorals, and this is called the cumulative injury cycle. So now the issue becomes that the scar tissue and the shortening of the pectorals, they become shortened and they become locked in a shortened position. And that's problematic because now you couldn't have proper technique even if you wanted to, because the joint is restricted. So in order to resolve that problem, you need to treat the soft tissue and resolve the mobility restrictions and use a proper structural balance program. A lot of athletes don't want to do that because it means you're going to need to significantly decrease the weight and again, probably stop bench pressing, which is against your religion, because you're going to be learning new motor patterns. You're going to be relearning, which is actually even harder than learning a new motor pattern. And you're going to be developing strength in a new range of motion. So in practice, this can actually produce really unprecedented results. I had a client who's still with me today who came to me a few years ago because he had severe pain in his shoulder, and he's a regional level hammer thrower, was benching 185, and he wanted to bench more and not be in severe pain. So when I did the assessment on these antagonistic muscles, he was so weak in the trap 3 raise that he couldn't even raise his arm. So for 3 weeks, we did 0 bench press in order to improve his bench press. And we prioritized the trap 3 and other critical muscles of the shoulder. You know, his friends made fun of him. He was really skeptical of the program. And at the end of the 3 weeks, because I still wouldn't have had a bench press, but he was, couldn't wait any longer. So he bench pressed and he lifted 225 easily with no pain from 185 3 weeks ago. So that's 22% increase in strength in 3 weeks. And that's not uncommon when you're in pain, because pain would be the biggest restrictor of that neural drive. Your brain will not allow you to destroy your joint, at least not instantly. Over time it will. So the principle of the story here is correct your structural balance, resolve mobility restrictions, and make sure your program has respect for alternating exercises so that you do the exercise frequently enough that you adapt to it, but then you alternate so you prevent overuse and repetitive strainages. So at the end of this video, you're going to see the actual, we have it on tape, Frank bench pressing 225 after that 3 weeks, so you can see that for yourself.
I like that. Come on. There you go. There you go. Wow. Good push. Let's go. Good push. Oh. I like that. Come on. There you go. There you go. Wow. Good push. Let's go. Good push. Oh.